one of the most powerful tools you can have in your arsenal to create the love you want, to create the relationship you want, to create the kind of work you want, to make the money you want, to create the business you want. Literally anything that you are trying to create as an external manifestation in your life, in any of those realms, even your own health and body, detachment from an outcome, detachment from the outcome is key to making that happen. And I'm making this video because this is something that comes up inevitably in all of my coaching conversations with people when I'm working with them. One part of it is designing and architecting intentionally the goal and the vision of what it is that you want to create. And if we do not exercise an appropriate amount of detachment towards the creation of that thing, we severely limit our creational power in being able to call that into existence. We can call this law of attraction, we can call this manifesting, and sometimes my judgment of those words and some of that philosophy is it seems very woo-woo, and I really want to break down the mechanics with this in a way that perhaps creates a different cut, a different way of looking at this so you can begin to digest it and implement it in your own life so you can start to get more success in any of these realms that you're wanting to create it. So I've got some notes here on my computer that I'm just going to be glancing over as I go through this. And the first part that I want to talk about is how attachment to an outcome gets in the way of our creational power. So just think about it for a moment. Think about something that you want. In fact, think about something that you have to have happen in your life that you haven't created yet, that it just needs to happen. And if it doesn't, you're really not going to be okay. Now, just notice if you've got something that you've been able to erect within yourself, just notice who it is that you are being when you think about that thing. Notice how you're in relationship with that thing. Maybe it's a certain monthly income. Maybe it's a certain type of partner. Maybe it's a certain type of love that hasn't been possible yet. When we are attached to an outcome, there's a way in which we are coming to the relationship half full, where we're coming to the relationship feeling incomplete. And we start to relate to that thing that we want as the missing piece in our life, where we create this rule system that when I get this thing, finally, I will feel complete. Finally, I will feel loved. Finally, I will prove something to myself that I've been trying to prove to myself my entire life. What that automatically begins to create within us is not only a sense of lack and ultimately not coming to the field of creation from a place of wholeness and completeness internally, but we're coming with this needy energy. We're coming with this kind of transactional way of being in relationship with this thing that we're wanting to create, where it's like, I'm going to put the effort in, and if I do that, I better get this back. Otherwise, it's not a fair deal, and I'm not going to be okay, and my well-being is going to be in the garbage. When we're attached to something, we're often in pursuit of that thing from a place of rigidity, anxiety, fear of loss, fear of it not happening. And often what's nipping at our heels in the pursuit of this thing that we think that we need, that we're so attached to, is we are terrified of crashing into an identity, a hellish, nightmarish identity that we've created for ourselves of what it means about us that maybe we don't have that thing yet, or what it's going to mean about us if we don't get that thing. I'm going to be a failure. I'm going to be unlovable. My life's going to be a waste. I'm not going to be a success. I'm not going to get approval, or somehow like I'm just not going to be able to love who I am or accept who I am anymore. Now, that is a very distorted fuel center within yourself to plug into to try to create from. Fear, anxiety, self-hate, judgment, all of these things, these are not energies that really allow us to bring our most expansive, resourceful, expanded self to the blank canvas of life to create from. So when we're plugged into this fear of we need this thing to happen because we're attached to it, we bring a distorted energy as the building blocks for our creation. And more often than not, it compromises what we are creating. It turns other people off. It demagnetizes us. It has other people and other relationships want to pull back because they don't want to be breeding with that energy on a psychic level. It's repelling. So when we're in a state of need, another thing that occurs is we start to get tunnel vision. We start to lose sight of the periphery because we're so attached to the outcome that we have this myopic view of this thing needs to happen or else, right? This thing needs to happen or else I'm not going to be okay. Life's not going to be okay. Other people aren't going to be okay. And what that does is we end up relating to this thing like a pit bull where we grab onto it and we start to lose contact with the messages that our environment, other people, life, and other opportunities that might be presenting themselves that are inviting us to be flexible and creative and to maybe take a circuitous route to create what we want. Or maybe that there's signs along the way that are there for us that will guide us into creating something even more magnificent and powerful than whatever it is that we're trying to create consciously. We miss that when we get myopic, when we get in this place of need. And so what that does is we go tunnel vision and our brain also shrinks and we lose our creativity, we lose our flexibility, we become rigid in our perspective, we become demanding rather than putting out invitations in life to people, we become transactional people rather than being collaborative. We oftentimes will divorce from our authenticity when we're in a place of need. When we're in a place of, I need this to happen, there can be I need this to happen at all costs. And what can happen is we may lose our center. We may end up divorcing from our principles, our values. We may start to shapeshift into what we think we need to be in order to get that thing. And we start acting in ways that we're not proud of, almost believing that the ends justifies the means. And so what we end up bringing into this creational process is a shell of ourselves rather than our authentic, plugged in and connected selves. And you have to ask the question then, what has more probability of creating what it is that you want? A shell of yourself or the most connected, grounded, genuine, authentic you? Most likely this one. And so this is the reason that we want to begin to see the damaging consequences of being attached to an outcome and why it's so important to begin to do the self-work necessary to detach from the outcome so that you can find the wholeness and the completeness within you first, and then enter the playing field of creating what you want from that place. Now, I'm going to talk about, as we switch gears in this video, I'm going to give you some reframes that I often give my clients as invitations to begin to help them look at what it is they're wanting to create from a different perspective that has them start to see it rather than put that thing on a pedestal as if it's going to save them, bring it down to eye level and actually relate to it from a place of truth and being in right relationship with reality. First piece that I'd say is that whatever it is that you're wanting to create that's not here yet in your life, there's a very good reason for it. And it has nothing to do with the universe punishing you. Oftentimes, the reason we haven't created what we want yet is because there is safety patterning in place. There is ecological objections inside of our life. Things where if we got the relationship that we think we want, it might throw us into a place of uncertainty that just feels like it's way too much to handle. Or it might deliver us to a problem that we actually really don't want. I oftentimes talk to people that want a relationship. And as we start to get really deep into the question, what might you lose that you value when you get this relationship you want? And we really get honest and we get out of the fantasy, there might be an objection there of, God, you know what? I'm afraid of losing myself if I really fell in love with somebody and found somebody that I was devoted to. Or, God, I think that I might crash into some type of anxiety and fear about now losing them, that if I don't have them yet, I don't have to deal with that. And I just don't think that I'm equipped yet to deal with now the anxiety that comes with trying to keep this person. Same thing that happens in leadership and business development, stepping into a higher level of shoes, a higher level of responsibility. Oftentimes there's a hidden objection there that maybe is a loss of freedom, a loss of self-expression, a way in which we feel trapped, a way in which maybe we start to feel inadequate, that we're not actually ready to face. And so by just beginning to look a little bit more holistically at the problems and the challenges that will come from you getting what you want, you can start to take that thing that appears as this kind of golden goose, and you can start to elevate it down to, or excuse me, de-elevate it down to eye level. See, you're not going to get rid of the problems in your life. There will always be more problems that you are dealing with as you get the things that you want. And everything that you want will come with circumstances that will actually crash you back into the unhealed parts of yourself. Everything you want, when you get it, will come with circumstances that will crash you back into the unhealed parts of yourself. So if you have an experience of feeling inadequate, if you have an experience of feeling hopeless, if you do not resolve that core emotion and you think that getting this certain thing is going to resolve that emotion, it won't. You will just simply fall into that unworthiness or that hopelessness when you get the relationship or when you get that certain monthly amount or when you achieve that certain goal. We have to stop making these goals the hero of an internal experience because it will only provide momentary relief and satisfaction, contrary to what you might be believing as you look at that thing that you want. So what this does is it helps us realize that perhaps whatever it is that you're feeling right now around anxiety or maybe unworthiness because you don't have this thing, that's the place to focus. That's the place to focus because that's not going away when you get what you want. The experience is to be with those feelings, to heal those parts of ourselves first. And then from that place, ask the question, now, what would I like? Do I still want the relationship? Do I still want the certain monthly income? Do I still want the more responsibility, right? Or am I trying to just use those things because I think they're going to solve an internal problem and that I'll arrive in a different place? This is where we can end up making decisions in life and going down a path that's actually not in line with us, is we set these external goals in hopes that it's going to solve an internal problem, and it doesn't. And then we crash into hopelessness and worthlessness in a way that we haven't crashed into it before. Because now we don't have the hope that something outside of us is going to save us anymore. And we're forced to look inward and start to do the work. So my invitation to you is start to do that now. Start to look at what is it in your life that you believe this thing, that if you got it, it would change about you or it would change about your relationship with yourself. And begin to question, is that actually true? And how can I step into having that now without this thing? Because from that place, I'm going to reiterate this, from coming from a place of being whole and complete, living into the story that you are whole and complete, that you are abundant, that you have everything you need right now within you. Your capacity to create is exponentially higher than if you are coming from an impoverished, unresourceful, restricted place of being and mind within yourself. Another way that we can begin to detach from the outcome is through staying present and being grateful for what we currently have. Dan Sullivan, who wrote a book called The Gap in the Gain, he's got a practice in this, and he doesn't necessarily relate it to creation. He relates it to, appreciation and gratitude journaling for business owners. And it's super powerful. Essentially, there's two things that we can relate to in life. We can relate to the gap, meaning the things that are missing in our life, or we can relate to the gain. And most of us have that are high performers and people that are out there doing things and perhaps working really hard tend to relate to the gap in their life. And that's what keeps them motivated. It's constantly seeing that something's missing and they're not done and they have to keep going and keep going. When we can start to use our mind intentionally to practice paying attention to the gain in our life, things start to shift massively. And I believe this is a powerful tool to begin to detach from the outcome. So one of the ways that you can start to practice being in relationship with the gain in your life is by looking at the progress that you are making every single day in whatever field you're in. Look at the progress you're making in terms of the relationship you have with yourself. Look at the progress you're making in terms of dating. Even if it is just an iota of progress, write it down. Start to train your brain to look for what is being created, even if it's a baby step versus what's not there or what's missing. You can do this in your business as well. I do this as a practice on a daily basis right now in my work, and I can tell you that it has saved me many sleepless nights and has had me continually track and see the growth and be in relationship with that rather than constantly comparing myself to some type of arbitrary ideal of where I think I should be. The book is called The Gap in the Gain. You can check it out by Dan Sullivan. Highly recommend it if this concept of what we're talking about is intriguing to you and you are wanting to continue to support detachment in your life. The next way to detach from the outcome is to notice, are you living in an infinite mindset or are you living in a finite mindset? There's a guy that wrote a book. His name's James Carse. He wrote a book called Finite versus Infinite Thinking back in the 80s. And essentially, he talks about these two different paradigms that people can be living in. You can be in the finite mindset where you're incredibly goal-oriented and you are operating from a way of being that I am not okay unless I get this thing. There's a very externally driven focus where life is a zero-sum game. There's winners and there's losers. There's competition. You don't want to be beat out. There's a real kind of survival way of orienting towards your goals. And then there's the infinite way of approaching life. And the infinite way of approaching life is to actually take the goal line that was outside of you of, I need to get this person attracted to me. I need to be in a relationship. I need to have children. I need to make this amount of money. I need to get this type of position, and actually bring the goal line inside of you. That's the difference between infinite versus finite. Infinite, you bring the goal line inside of you and you ask the question, who am I becoming? What are the character traits that I am carving out of marble within myself through this journey that nothing can take away from me? That regardless of whether the outcome happens or not, the real prize is this person and this character and these skills that are crystallizing from me as a result of being on this journey. It's not the goal. The goal is the booby prize. The goal is achieving the goal is the fake prize in the infinite way of thinking. And when we can relate to it that way, there's a way in which the insecurity begins to evaporate, because we realize that anything that is worth anything is coming from who you are becoming on the journey, who you are developing into on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and tracking that. That goes nicely with the gap in the game journaling as well. And then finally, another way to detach from the outcome and allow yourself to experience more freedom and allow your creational authority, the power for you to be able to take aligned action from the most resourceful place inside of you, the most creative, flexible place within you, to create the best possible chance of what you want coming into being in your life, is to get curious and start questioning your premises, start questioning what's happening in your life. So a couple questions that you can start to ask yourself. Number one is it true that I'll be this bad, intolerable thing if I don't get what I want? Is it true? So there's typically something we're running from within ourselves, an identity that we don't want to be when we're trying to attain something, right? Like, I don't want to be a failure, or I don't want to be a mess up, or I don't want to be dumb, or I don't want to be unlovable. And if I get this thing, then I can finally put to rest this identity that I've been running from. One way to detach is to turn around for a moment and face that thing that is seemingly driving you in from a place of anxiety towards this thing that you want. Is it true that I'll be unlovable if I don't have the relationship I want? Is it true that I won't actually get the love that I want in this lifetime if I don't have the relationship that I want? Right? Is it true that I won't be a success, or everything will fall apart if this one thing doesn't happen? Is it actually true? Can I absolutely know 100% that that is true? And it's a yes or no response. Okay. The power of that. And by the way, some of this is borrowed from what I believe is a spiritual master. Her name's Byron Katie. She's got a couple books out there called The Work and Loving What Is, and then her work is inside of that book. Some of these questions, to actually question your beliefs, can slow you down for a moment and can have you examine the thing that you're running from more consciously, intentionally, and deliberately, so that you can actually detach from it and say, wait a second, maybe that's not true. Maybe I can actually have the love that I've been looking for now within me, and I don't actually need another person to come validate that. Maybe I can actually die complete and live a life where I feel like a success to myself, regardless of whether this thing happens in terms of my bank account or in terms of what I'm up to or the impact I'm making in the world. Maybe that's actually possible without this thing. When we start to explore that, we unhook these attachments to this external thing that we have no control over truly. We have influence over, we have no control over. We unhook ourselves from that, which then return us to operating from a more expansive, sober, and clear view. And another question you can ask yourself in the same vein of curiosity is, what might be waiting for me outside the realm I'm aware of if I was just to let go of thinking that this thing that I want is best for me? What could come online in my environment that is an opportunity that may be even better than what it is that I think that I want so badly? And what that does is it just allows us to slow down and get into relationship with the infinite possibility of what life has to offer in the realm of business, career, relationship. And we get to slow down and say, okay, you know what? It could be that my attachment to this thing happening is blocking the real gift from coming through, the real opportunity, the relationship that I'm not going to have to be so stressed out about, the work that I'm not going to have to try so hard to create. And so that kind of surrender, right? That question leads us into a place of surrender and allow us to just slow down and be more of a witness to our experience. And that doesn't mean that we don't have to still take, or that we can't still take action towards creating what we want, but we can do it from a place where we are moving forward methodically, putting one foot in front of the other, staying fully conscious, staying fully open, having all of our resources available, rather than trying to sprint to the finish line because we feel like our being is on fire. And that thing, if we get it, will just be finally doused and put out. My name's Clayton Olson. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel for more content like this and content to help you up-level your relationships and your life. Please leave a comment below. And if you're looking for a guide called The 5 Secrets to Create Extraordinary Love, I've got it in the description. It's free for you, and it is a distillation of 10 years of coaching people and coming up with some counterintuitive frames that I believe are really the foundation for relationships that last. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.